Tomorrow, Nigeria will be 62 years old, and we all will be singing happy birthday to Nigeria and all Nigerians. And this marks 62 years of the attainment of her independence from Britain in 1960. But not many are pleased with the progress the country has recorded since then. Faced with internal and external security challenges, increased agitation for secession, economic instability, extreme poverty, and food insecurity, some analysts have described Nigeria as a 62-year-old with the functionality of a suckling infant. Endowed with some of the best resources in the world, many say Nigeria should have become a productive and industrialized nation by now, competing with developed nations and not one begging for aid from abroad. As the country commemorates its 62nd anniversary, is there much to celebrate? We have in the studio to discuss all of this and make sense of them, Agribusiness Coach and Consultant, African farmer Mogaji. It's nice to have you join us in the studio.
Thank you for having
Welcome.
me. Thank you.
Right. And joining us from our Abuja studio is public sector analyst, Michael Oluwagbemi. Michael, it's good to have you join me now.
It's a pleasure.
Great.
Good morning.
Right. Welcome. Now, African farmer, let's start from agriculture, in fact. Okay. The point there is, tomorrow is Independence Day. Everybody will be waving the green, white, green flag. All flyers, all colors will be green, white, green. I remember that the green stands for agriculture. Yeah. That is what we're known for. Mm-hmm. But yet, we have food insecurity right now. Talk to us, basically, the days of the granite pyramids in the north, you know, the cocoa in the southwest and the oil palm in the southeast. You know, the country was making a whole lot of progress. How did we get it wrong that we're here 62 years after, and instead of pouring, in fact, extending the granite pyramids to the south so that they have pyramids all over the place, we don't have any pyramids anymore?
Well, fundamentally, we were leading and we were food secure when we were trading together. Okay. You don't fight with your business partners. So when we were trading together, when granite was coming here and cola was moving to the north and palm oil was moving to the north, when we were trading together, we protected each other. When we stopped doing business with each other, when the political will dropped to invest in agriculture, issues showed up. And you know, there's this missing link that many people really don't know, that the downturn in the agri sector was fundamentally when they decided to punish people, staffs of government, when they've done something wrong, they post them to the production sector in agri.
So it looks like it's a punishment to do anything in agriculture.
Yeah. So if you're in the head office and they want to deal with you, they send you to the producing areas, and you don't have that competence, but they, you know, so you can't come home and co. And don't forget, when we're in school too, when you were to serve a punishment, it was to go cut grass or weed. So fundamentally, we began to have people who did not have the production competence head production. And gradually, they began to cascade down, you know, that incompetency. And that is fundamentally what has brought us to where we are.
All right. Let me kind of fill that question over to Mr. Oluwagbemi, who is in our Abuja studio. So at the crux of this has been woe after woe, though that stand might be debatable from the stance of government. But in terms of, you know, why are we not producing what we can eat, you know, that production challenge which has reflected across the sectors of the Nigerian society. What's your perspective?
Good morning once again to you guys. I think the genesis of Nigeria's current low productivity in the agriculture sector has to be our sudden discovery of oil wealth during and post the Civil War. And unfortunately, the thirst and the ease of getting oil made us fundamentally lazy. Our government, first and foremost, became very lazy in collecting revenue. And in doing so, they also became more dependent on the easy revenue of just producing crude oil, exporting it, having government be able to centralize that earnings and, of course, share some of those earnings with subnational governments who used to be primarily funded by agriculture and agricultural exports. Over time, these subnational governments, who actually do have the primary responsibility for the agriculture sector, began to abandon agriculture as a source of tax revenue, either on the personal income tax basis or a source of export revenue from the point of commodity boards and commodity exports. And over time, that has led us to fundamentally move from an agri-export-based economy, driven primarily by production in our various production centers, to a country that was waiting on the largesse of crude oil, that was very dependent on the opinion of others on what the price of crude oil should be. In the last 10 years, however, the good news is that we've begun to realize our folly. At least in the last 5 years, for example, we've begun to move towards being able to be self-sufficient in a staple food like rice, which is very fundamental. And we've actually seen an increase in the amount of tonnage and the amount of production and our ability to actually feed ourselves. If you ask Nigerians, say 6-7 years ago, even less, will Nigerians be primarily patronizing local rice? A lot of Nigerians will tell you it's not possible. Their taste buds were more biased towards foreign rice, and that Nigerian rice cannot be as good. But if you look at Nigeria today, over 90% of the rice you consume is produced by Nigerian farmers. I'm a farmer myself. I farm well over 200 hectares. And I'm an engineer and a development strategist, but I'm on the farm. Because the government in the last 5 to 7 years have begun to emphasize this issue of moving and going back to the farm. Because if you look at it, any economy that really, really wants to develop, so whether it wants to go to become a manufacturing economy or a service economy, has to be based on agriculture. Your technology for auto vehicles, your technology for space vehicles, your technology for robotics, everything emerged from agriculture. Agriculture is at the base of any society's ability to advance from basic technology to advanced technology. So our abandonment of technology for 30 to 40 years did not do us any good. And it had to do fundamentally with government laziness of our elites and laziness of our economic actors, depending on one sole product. When in reality, by the way, we are not a country that's just blessed with crude oil. We're a gas province, we're a gas country. And we even abandoned that, and we are flaring that, we are wasting that, but because we could get money and easy money from crude oil. That is what got us to where we are today. But I think we are beginning to mend our ways. At least in the last month or even last couple of months, Nigeria hardly made any money from crude oil net after we imported refined petroleum. And yet we're able to share fact because the economy has begun to diversify. I always say this, Nigeria's economy was always fundamentally diversified. But the problem was government revenue was not diversified. Maybe now government is beginning to emphasize expanding the tax base and moving the country towards a more diversified revenue base to mirror the actual economy, which is actually 25% agriculture and less than 5-6% crude oil.
All right, African farmer, let me come to you on this. Of course, you have been talking about the issue of rice. He said that close to 60 or 70% of the rice we consume now is from...
I heard 95.
95. Okay, I thought my ears were doing me somehow. 95%. But anyway, let's leave that. Let's come to the issue of agricultural template. Nigeria not doing what's supposed to do now is not a failure of the knowledge of the fact that because we had done this before. The templates are there. We had universities of agriculture. We have colleges and monotechnics of agriculture. We have agricultural research institutes. What are all of these institutions doing when we are talking of food insecurity and so on? How do we reconcile it?
Well, we have the institutions. Many of them are not well funded. Okay. A majority of them are not well funded, but the technical know-how is still there, still chunking out students. But you will be amazed at the level of research that is available that has gathered dust. You know, and you know, I used to tour West Africa at least once or twice a year to look for opportunities. And every time I came back, I would spend like 5 to 10 days. Every time I came back, hoping that I had discovered something that I would bamboozle my colleagues in the research institute, they would just tell me, hold on. Or they take me to one store, open up, and I will see different varieties of what I brought. There is nothing we need that is not domiciled in the country. There's the monotechnics, freshwater fisheries, marine water, different specializations. So bottom line is that the political will to do, to look inward is not there. We still prefer to look outside, and that is a major challenge. Even the rice we're talking about, we're not rice sufficient. We're not close to it.
So you don't agree? You don't agree with?
No, we're not. We're not.
Production ramped up.
When you look at the amount, you have to justify the amount of money that has gone in vis-a-vis the production that we have and vis-a-vis the current price. Nigerians are consuming local rice because the foreign rice was banned, okay? And even Nigeria, the moment we have access to the foreign rice, we will go back to that. Why? Because the price difference is not much. And you can predict how long that rice you can cook it for. The caterers and co that chunk out rice for parties and co still cannot predict the local rice. You cook it, it's work in progress. It is good, we consume it because we don't have a choice. The aspect of ensuring that it is consumer driven, where the consumers will want it, even when you put options down, that has not been put on the table until we resolve that. The moment Egypt goes back to rice production, we're leading because Egypt took a national decision because they needed to conserve water. That's why we're number one. Now, if Egypt decides that we're going back to rice, they will flood us with rice. So, the metrics of, we're not eating enough. The price of the rice, beyond the economy, beyond dollar, the price of rice has gone up and it has stayed there. So if we have put in that amount of money, the huge billions, the price of rice should drop by like 40%. When the pyramids, showed up again, there was a conversation that rice would drop. I've not seen that happen in the market. What has happened, and I said it here, that the middlemen who buy it will hoard it, knowing election will come. And when they release it in election period, it will be more expensive.
And we're heading towards Christmas now.
Yeah.
In the last quarter of the year.
So bottom line is that the policies, the political will, putting the right ministry putting ministries to work together. Where we are, because ministries are not working together, is one ministry championing everything as against a cocktail of ministries working together.
All right, we'll get to Mr. Oluwagbemi in Abuja in a moment, but I'm still talking about funding for the agricultural sector, for example. Some have said that may not be our main problem, but perhaps, like you said, the government should channel these funds appropriately. Okay, so rice, for example, could be promising. So, but what else are we doing to tap the full potential of rice production, for example? Do you see it as wholly a fund affair?
No, rice. Agri sector is not a fund affair. I can tell you with authority. It's not about funding. There are different fundings available. In fact, we've not been able to unlock even the private sector to fund agri. It's majorly a policy issue and a system issue. We have the regulatory agencies not being able to ensure that we have quality inputs. Without quality input, your output remains the same. So mechanization is bigger than funding in the country. And also comparative advantage. We've not been funding our comparative advantage. So take, for instance, corn. Corn is a better comparative advantage. When you produce corn, baby products, baby foods, the pharmaceutical industry use more cornstarch. You and I take more akamuogi and co. The livestock industry depends on that. So protein would be available. The price, it's going to be affordable. Corn, cassava, sweet potato, those are a comparative advantage that we need to pay attention to.
All right, let me get to Michael in Abuja. Now, the point there is, let's talk about the issue of insecurity as it affects the nation. At a time like this, recall that Nigeria used to be that place where if you want to travel from Kano to Bayelsa by night, feel free. You can travel anytime. You can go in fact, if you want to pack all the monies you have and put in the car and travel, you could do that. Although there were once in a while robbery on the way. But the way Nigeria is right now, even traveling by road, anywhere now, and everybody becomes highly concerned. We are 62 years. Talk to us about this.
Yeah, first let me just quickly chip in a point around agriculture before I move on to the issue of security. It is true that the price of rice has risen as a result of the ban of import of rice. But the truth is, if we as a country had over the years been doing what we should be doing, we will have achieved this self-sufficiency much earlier. So when you are trying to achieve self-sufficiency, there has to be a period of denial. There has to be a period where you actually prevent your market from being flooded by foreign competitors who have already achieved their own level of comparative advantage. So this is just a process on the road or path to full self-sufficiency and optimal production. So we cannot be complaining about what we should have done 40 years ago because we are now just doing it. We just have to do it. The second point is, as a farmer, I'm not praying for the reduction of price of any food product. Farmers have a right and have a expectation to get good price for their product as well. They have a right to be rich. Consumers, we hope, can have their standards of living raised so that they can afford more expensive food, so that farmers can also be rich. Farming should not be a profession of poverty. So this is my position. So I think we need to balance the affairs of the farmer, hopefully, that the middlemen also reduce their take and the farmers can be able to get more benefit of higher prices of food and they can be rich and stop being a profession of poverty. Now let's move to the issue of security. The issue of security fundamentally also goes back to what we have not been doing over the years. Nigeria is a country that had increased in population by over 346% since 1960. The average of the world is about 174%. So we actually doubled the world when it comes to population growth rate. But have we increased our productivity? Is Nigeria producing more for these many more children that we are giving birth to? The answer is no. And when you have about 20 to 35 million kids that are jobless, the only solution is crime. So when you talk about being able to travel with money from Ibadan all the way to Sokoto, it was because in that era, the population was largely rural and agrarian, and now the population is more urban, more youthful, and jobless. It's not as if they had great jobs in 1960. For God's sake, our GDP per capita in 1960 was $85. Today is about $2,200, almost $3,000. But the point is, when you start being urbanized, when your population starts exceeding the boundaries of a rural agrarian economy, where you might have full employment just because people can go to the farm, they can farm yam, they can farm cowpea, they can farm sesame, they can farm soya in their rural area, to an urban economy where you're going to have dislocation, then there's bound to be unemployment. And when there's unemployment, you also have crime. So there's a linkage between the changing economy from 1960, where we had 3% urbanization and 97% of our population living in rural areas, to today, where we are having 52% of our population, much larger population, by the way, living in the urban area, and only 48% living in the rural areas. This is the fundamental reality of the economy that we operate.
And let me take you to your earlier point about, the gains we made at a point in the oil sector and, of course, sidelining other non-oil sectors like the agriculture. So now in the oil sector, we are seeing what people have called a grand scale level of oil theft.
I understand he can't, we lost the line there, so I think you can direct your question to African Farmer while we wait for Michael to come back.
And, okay, so Mr. Oluwagbemi was talking about, we left what could have, fetched us a ready lump of monies, year in, year out, and then focused on the oil sector. But now we are seeing alarming statistics of oil being stolen, barrels, hundreds of thousands of barrels, pipelines, vandalism, and all that, which has become a major security scare. What's your insight on this matter? How do you assess what we have on our hands?
Well, first and first is to say that Nigeria temporarily abandoning or forgetting agriculture is not unique. We can measure Malaysia and Nigeria because we have same governance, same climate and co. Malaysia also abandoned agriculture when they discovered oil. Many countries do that. However, along the line, they wake up and use the oil money to develop other sectors. That is what Nigeria did not do. And now, for every coin, there are two sides to it. The fact that there is oil theft and we can't find the oil again makes it, very crucial for the government to look into other areas that you can't, punch a hole and the thing is leaking. It's good for agriculture that oil is going down, but not good for the players in that sector. So now government has to go back to their cash cow, which is now revamp the institutions, look at how to engage the youth, actually invest across the value chain to be able to sustain itself. So the oil missing is big opportunity for our sector. And I'm not sure we want them to find the oil again. Yeah, because we can get more oil, from the agri value chain. We can get more gas from the farm wastes. So bottom line is that...
Which is safer, so it helps the climate change activists.
It helps the climate change activists. It helps in a lot of other ways. So bottom line is what we're getting from one source, we can get from multiple sources in the agri sector, and it is more sustainable because it's not from one region of the country, it's in every state and every region. So when Nigeria was number one in various things, education and co, it was fundamentally because every state in every region was contributing something to the middle.
Okay. I hear Michael is back now online. Michael, when we started, I was talking about the Nigerian flag being green, white, green, and the green standing for agriculture. And we had to strategically pick up this discussion from there because this is our identity, where you talked about comparative advantage earlier, where just with ease, everybody was involved in agriculture with ease. Our fathers, our grandfathers, and all our sisters and mothers were all involved in it, doing the business of it. Now, talk to us from the window of investment. Can we go back into the days where agriculture is our identity to the level where it is even on our national flag? Our passport is green. We have the green identity. We have the green ideology. We have everything green. Can we go back to it again to live that life? I wonder what it will take.
The simple answer is no. Not everybody will be involved in agriculture. We are a much more urbanized country than we were in 1960 and even in 1984. When this president was president in 1984, Nigeria was 10% urban and 90% rural. Today, Nigeria is 52% urban and 48% rural. That is, more people live in urban areas in Nigeria today than they live in the rural area. And that is because the fundamental shift in Nigeria demographic. That is because we created multiple centers of development when we founded 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. So we have about 80 cities in Nigeria, for example, that is larger than the capital of Botswana, one of the fastest growing developing countries in Africa. So we have 80 cities in Nigeria that is bigger than their capital. That is to tell you that Nigeria is an urban country. So we will not go back to that era where we are going to have everybody involved in agriculture. But what we can go back to is an era where we take our food security seriously, where we can ensure that even the parts of the economy that are not engaged in agriculture support the development of a country that is not just food secure, but also energy secure. You see, food security and energy security equals national security. So when we talk about this security that you're talking about, if Nigeria has enough power for our rural area, for example, I sit on the board of the Rural Electrification Agency representing the Southwest Nigeria. Over 60-70% of our rural area do not have access to power. So if they don't have access to power, then they cannot process the agricultural products. Most of the agricultural products will get spoiled on the way to the market. As a result of that, high wastage leads to low productivity the next season. Also leads to high prices for the current consumers when it cannot be justified. So we can make the life of our rural dwellers a whole lot easier, reduce the rural-urban drift by ensuring that we can provide them power within the rural areas where they live. We can increase productivity of our agriculture sector so that we can feed ourselves and maybe export some excess. However, maybe 25% of our economy and less is going to continue to be in agriculture. We're going to become a more service-oriented economy that will be dealing more in technology, that will be leveraging more of construction. These are sectors that can actually create a quantum amount of job. I always say it, I say, look, we have about 30 million Nigerian youths today, roughly, that are unemployed. And about 85% of them do not have any kind of education beyond GSS 3. So the kind of jobs that you're going to provide for that 85%, which makes the vast majority of the unemployed, is not going to be in things like technology, like coding. It's going to be things like agriculture. It's going to be in things like construction. Nigeria needs to construct and build new cities. We still have just all the cities that we used to have in 1960, plus maybe additional Abuja, for a population that has gone up by 340%. So we need to build new cities to house this population. And this population also needs to be fed. We are going to go up to almost 450 million people by 2050. So Nigeria needs to construct one new Abuja every 4 years in order to be able to meet the demands of our population. But we also have to be able to feed them. So, and in feeding them, we are not going to be doing more land. We're going to be doing more productive land. We're going to be deploying more inputs, better inputs. We're going to be able to manufacture our own fertilizer. For example, Dangote Fertilizer has come on board. We're the second largest in the world. We're going to be able to bring in our own mechanization so that we can ensure that our lands can be tilled, our productivity can go from average of less than 1 ton per hectare today to almost 5, 10, 15 tons, so that we're not necessarily tilling more land. We are tilling the current amount of land we have, and we are producing way more to feed much larger population. That is what we need to do. Apply science, apply financial engineering to agriculture.
Right. Let me quickly ask, while we still have a few more minutes left because of time, I asked earlier before the line got disconnected, your perspective on the enormous leakages in the oil sector, especially looking at the level of oil theft, pipeline vandalism, in that order. It's been said that, okay, the government even needs to purge itself of this, what's been called the grand-scale conspiracy.
Yes, it's a symptom rather than the disease. As a son of the oil sector, my first career, I started it out in ExxonMobil, and I spent about 13 years in the sector. One thing you have to know is that the oil and gas sector of Nigeria is concentrated in the Niger Delta area. And there's a grassroots discontent in that area with the way the government have largely treated that sector and those people. And you cannot have security where you have a large level of insecurity and as well as unfairness. So that fundamental unfairness have created the environment for the kind of grand theft and the kind of conspiracy that has not happened between those people who are supposed to be guarding the till and those people who are trying to steal from the till. But you are saying they are stealing from the till, and they will look at you and say, no, we're not stealing from the till. We're denied our right for good infrastructure, despite being the being the oil basket of the country. We're denied the ability to access this revenue to improve the lives of our people. That's what I mean, the goods that lay the golden egg. So the fundamental unfairness of Nigeria in the last 40 to 50 years, polluting the Delta environment, creating unrest, not educating the people, not investing in infrastructure, created a kind of insecure environment that have allowed this kind of grand theft to thrive. Now because everybody is in survival mentality, and of course, the officials that are now sending over there to go and guard this kind of oil, number one, they cannot access it. Many parts of the Niger Delta is inaccessible. The creeks, if you go to areas where the likes of Tompolo and the like of Tomateke and the kind of militants live in the creek, there's no federal presence there. So who are you to even go there to go and enforce? So what will happen is a grand conspiracy between those who are sent to enforce and those people who want to steal the oil. So that is there. But I have to say that I am for even moving our country away from the emphasis on oil and gas, oil especially, oil production. We should be a country that should be focused on how do we develop what is above our neck, the knowledge economy. How do we use the knowledge economy to increase productivity? How do we use it to solve the health challenges of our country? How do we use it to make our people to live longer? How do we use it to solve the issues of sanitation, the issues of hygiene? How do we use this to solve the problem of joblessness that is abounds among our people? That is what we need to focus on. Oil ultimately will solve itself because I think in the long run, oil will continue to be a valuable resource, but we are going to be a country that will depend by and large on more renewable energy, be it hydro. We're a country that have way more hydro energy than oil, by the way. We're a country that we have to depend more on gas because we're a gas province. More than 30 states in Nigeria have some kind of one form of oil find, gas find or the other. And we should be a country depending on gas for our power and gas for our production in our industrial sector. So I think those sectors are more important if you ask me. and oil over time will need to be de-emphasized. Yes, we need to see how to curtail some form of crude oil theft that is going on, but the honest truth is that I do not think it's going to be Uhuru anytime soon, because the injustice and the unfairness that created this situation was created over 50 years. You cannot solve it in 4 to 8 years.
Okay. We must thank you, Michael Oluwagbemi, for your insight into all of these. I will wish you the best and happy independence to you as we celebrate it tomorrow.
Thank you very much. I'm wishing you happy Independence Day.
Okay.
God bless.
Thank you. Well, we still have the African farmer in the studio. Now, let's go back to where we started from, the pyramid, the groundnut pyramid. Now, the idea of the groundnut pyramid was an idea conceived by one Alhaji Al-Hassan Dantata, which tells us that private sector investment into all of this can make things happen. We all mention all of those investments that time, but they were all private sector investment.
Yeah.
So are we saying that the future and the glory of agriculture, bringing it back and all of that are in the hands of private investors who are not doing the work right now?
It's mostly in the hands of government.
Why?
Policy.
Okay.
Policy and the political will to enforce policy. The private sector automatically gravitates towards where they can make money. When the policies are implemented and the private sector can see end to end, the private sector, mostly the banks, will come in. When the banks come in, the local investors will come in. Until the policy is sorted, every investor that comes has come to play. Most of the investors who are in the ag sector now, they put money, they are happy, but guess what? 1 year, 2 years down the line, policy drops their investments. So policy first, then private sector needs to come in, especially the banks, until we have that understanding. And the private sector needs to understand that agriculture is not strictly a money-making venture. It doesn't work. It has not worked anywhere in the world like that. It has to be impact and profit-driven. You don't approach it that way, you lose the money. The countries that have done it, when Nigeria was doing it, was both profit and impact. You married the two together, you're doing well.
Okay. All right, we have to leave you here now. Thank you very much, African farmer Mogaji, for your time on the program. I will wish you a happy independence anniversary to you and all Nigerians.
Absolutely.
Ahead of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.